On June 12th, Steven Spielberg released a film about a whistleblower forcing the entire world to confront proof that we are not alone, and it opened at number 1, pulling in $44 million domestically, his best opening weekend for an original film since Saving Private Ryan. That same day, far from the box office charts, the Department of War quietly uploaded its third batch of declassified UAP files to a government website, including a signed report from the director of the Pentagon's own UAP office describing an orange orb that appeared to launch smaller red orbs from somewhere inside itself. Buried in that same release was a 1992 CIA confession admitting that secret spy plane flights accounted for more than half of all UFO reports in the late 1950s and 60s, and that the government had lied to the public about it on purpose for decades. 3 days later, the White House quietly assembled its first official scientific body dedicated entirely to UAP research, led by Harvard astrophysicists and made up of 11 scientists. And in a move nobody fully expected, one of the most prominent professional skeptics in the country was placed on the council, specifically to make sure nobody gets ahead of the evidence. Also this week, the remains of a Los Alamos missing employee were finally found, and what was discovered next to her has only deepened the questions surrounding her case. A new theory about psychological weapons entered the conversation around the broader pattern of missing scientists, and somewhere in northern Scotland 2,000 years ago, someone removed a woman's brain after she died, snapped 4 of her bones in half, and sharpened them into points. Welcome back to Infinite Rabbit Hole. What's up, everyone? I'm Jeremy Socia, and you're listening to Infinite Rabbit Hole, your weekly briefing on the unexplained. Tonight, I'm joined by my co-host, Jake, and we've got yet another stacked episode for you. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, since it helps more people find the show. You can also find us on InfiniteRabbitHole.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. Before we get into it, a couple of quick things. On July 18th, I'll be presenting at the MUFON, Wisconsin meeting at the Waukesha Airport. And on July 25th, I'll be at Elmwood UFO Days, presenting and leading bus tours throughout the day. I'd love to see you at either one, so check your social posts for more details. And if you're in Menominee, Wisconsin area, go check out 2 great local shops downtown. TC Vintage has been a fixture in the area for about 2 decades, and a few years back, the second location got a refresh with a new name, a new spot downtown, and a sharper focus on the vintage finds people love them for. That's where you'll find official IRH t-shirts and copies of my book, UF Elmwood. So stop in, grab some merch, and just down Main Street is Dragon Tales Books, a cozy independent bookstore run by Ann Vogel that's become a real community hub since it's opened. They're also carrying copies of UF Elmwood as well. So swing by, say hi, and support great local shops. Jake, you ready for tonight, bud?
Yep, ready for tonight.
So we took a trip today.
We took a trip.
We did. We
went a long journey, some would say.
Went down to TC Vintage, said hello to Grant, the owner, and dropped off some of our merchandise to be officially sold there.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Yeah, you can go down to...
right here.
There are 4 of those, and it's actually the only thing at TC Vintage of Infinite Rabbit Hole that's legitimately vintage, because it's last year's UFO Days shirt. So if you want a 2005 UFO Days shirt and your size extra large, because there's only 4 extra large.
2005?
Yeah. 2025.
Yeah.
Super
last
vintage.
Year,
Before we even did the podcast, before I even graduated high school.
Right.
Yeah. We have some red t-shirts and some black t-shirts down there, as well as the book UF Elmwood. If you're local, by all means, stop at Dragon Tales as well. Anne is amazing, and she's been selling my books for quite a while, and I appreciate her for doing that. But yeah, we stopped in at TC Vintage today. I went there yesterday with my brother, and I grabbed Jake and I some pretty cool knickknacks. And so Jake was like, yo, let's go check this out. And I took him down there today. And Jacob got himself a cool little thing. Go ahead and tell the fans, bud.
It's a piece, or they say it's a piece of a mosasaur lower jaw section. So it's pretty nifty. This is the stuff that I like. So I got my little display cabinet thing back there. I've got a couple fish fossils and things like that. And so yeah, this is for the dinosaur deniers, I suppose. There was things bigger than the things we have now at one point or another. This
Fake.
says it doesn't say, but some would say millions of years old. I'm going to say thousands of years old, but very cool.
Millions and billions. And then when I was there yesterday, I bought Jake and I some pretty cool things. They actually have a pretty large collection of this stuff, but some iridium glass. Check that out. It's radiated. We actually ran a little experiment today, Jake.
Yeah, we did. I have a Geiger counter of all things inside my truck that I was going to use when we were doing our UFO days research and things like that for Elmwood. And well, I mean, as long as we can access the quarry and we're not trespassing, we could still use it. So we'll definitely have to talk to whoever's running the quarry, the city, or whatever company it is, and ask if we can walk around down there with the Geiger counter around the rim and stuff like that. So, but yeah, put the Geiger counter inside of the uranium glass, and sure enough, it started ticking away and showing us numbers. It was very interesting.
It was very cool. And they have a nice collection. I mean, there was like a gravy bowl there that I was looking at, and I was like, you know what goes good with Thanksgiving turkey? Radiation.
Well, I saw something on YouTube. They said that it puts out as much radiation as a banana, so it's actually not harmful at all. But yeah, no, definitely interesting. And I think that the most interesting part is that, yeah, it's cool and it's like a neat novelty, but any of the pieces that you find are more than likely from the 50s.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when they stopped making them because of limits on glass companies, I guess, ability to get
actually
uranium or whatever. But
actually, it was the start of the Manhattan Project that reduced the amount of radium that was basically at hand. You know, as part of the inventory of the country. It all got snuck into Project Manhattan, or the Manhattan Project, for World War II.
So basically, whoever made our little glassware that Jeremy picked up is dead. It's old and they're dead, more than likely. So, yeah, very interesting. I actually saw someone, he bought a 100-year-old uranium glass knife and then sharpened it and cut an orange with it. So he's like, this is interesting.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. So it looked like a small chef's knife made out of glass. And so he was sitting there sharpening it and stuff. And it was very interesting.
I might have to, like, every week just go down there and grab a new piece and eventually just create a wall full of iridium glass. I think it's so cool.
That might have been the antique shop that burned down. I don't know. But they had a lot of pieces of that.
So we can talk about this a little bit more off mic, but yeah, that's I'm pretty sure that was Grant's collection. I was in that antique shop, before it burned down.
I wonder if it turned into a big old elephant foot that emits radiation now.
Ooh, we should go down to that pit.
We should go to the pit to find the elephant's foot.
I didn't think about that. I wonder what would happen if you burn iridium glass. Interesting.
Is it iridium or uranium?
It's iridium, I think. Not uranium. Hold on.
They also call it
iridium. IRIDIUM.
Okay.
And what's really cool about it is Grant's got it all displayed there with a black light over it, so it all glows like super lime green. It's really neat looking. But yeah, totally found a new obsession of mine here. just to show the listeners, like, you know, some people know about this stuff and they're gonna be like, oh man, this is lame, let's fucking leave this. But there's gonna be somebody out there that has never heard of this shit, and they're gonna be like, dude, thank you for turning me on to this. Actually, let's
There's actually other things too. There's like you can find vases and stuff that's not glass like that. It's actually, it looks more like porcelain. And people will go into like Goodwills and antique shops with a black light and just look for things that are made out of iridium glass or has iridium in it. And not everything is clear like that, like a greenish sort of glass. Like I said, it looks like a porcelain vase or something like that, or it's like a clock face, and they'll hit it with a black light, and you can see it glowing green because it always glows green. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So you could pick up something like an old piece of cookware or whatever, or old bowl that isn't made out of glass or clear glass, and it actually has that because it'll glow under a black light. I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. Didn't know that.
Actually, fun fact that Grant filled me in on yesterday when I was all excited about seeing, because I saw it and I was like, is this what I think it is? And he's like, yeah, it is. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. But there's other ones, manganese, cadmium, selenium. They all glow different colors. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Right? Set up a nice little blacklight display, and then just take mushrooms.
That'd be a trip. And then what?
And then trip on mushrooms.
Yeah. And then lick them all.
And lick them all. Easy
lick all of them.
All right, man. You ready to get in the quick hits, dude?
I am.
All right.
While you're doing that, I'm gonna be setting up a print, so I'm gonna have my stuff muted because it makes a little bit of noise.
You better be listening.
I will. But so if you guys come to the UFO days where we have like our booth set up and it's underneath a little tent and we sell T-shirts and stuff, I'm trying to make the UFO. I'm trying to 3D print the UFO that was in was Officer Wheeler's description of the UFO. So he made a little drawing and we've translated that into an image that I could then turn into a 3D print file. So I've been working on it for a couple weeks now, but I think I'm finally to the point where we're printing it. So hopefully this next episode, I'll be able to show a physical representation of that drawing that Officer Wheeler had. And so I'll probably have it like hanging up somewhere back here on display and then give Jeremy one too. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked about it. So it should be really cool. So if you guys come to the thing and you want, little UFOs, I don't know how big I'm going to do yet, but UFOs that are exactly like Officer Wheeler's description, come over to there and I'll be probably selling them for, depending on how big they are, but nothing more than $20 a piece, for the real big ones. So I don't know, it should be cool. So
I think it's gonna be sweet, man.
Yeah,
I've seen the design and it's
I just don't know how much detail I can get with really small ones without doing like a resin printer or something like that. Which I'm not going to go and buy a resin printer. That's a lot, right?
Trial and error, man.
But yeah, we'll see how big or small they can be. Really, because also I'm going to have to hand paint them. So I'll print them out in a shiny PLA. But then I'm going to have to go in there and paint, the windows and all that sort of stuff. So not sure, how many I want to do. 100 of them where I have to get in there and just, hand paint all the little details and stuff. But yeah, we're going to figure it out. To work. So, yeah, it should be pretty cool. So I don't know, have some interesting stuff there that might be a hit. And definitely have to hit up Amy about it and stuff if I start making them and be like, hey, by the way, if you guys want to sell these inside of your little store, we'll figure something out. Or maybe keychains and stuff like a flat image or something. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, should be cool.
Heck yeah, man. All right. Let's get into quick hits. Before we get into our main stories tonight, running through quick hits, our rapid roundup of the stories from the last 10 days that deserve your attention, even if we don't have time to go deep on them. Let's go. For the first time since 2010, the International Academy of Astronautics has formally rewritten the rules for what happens if humanity actually finds extraterrestrial intelligence. The old protocol was built almost entirely around catching a narrow radio signal, but the new version, ratified this month and led by a University of Manchester astronomer, expands the definition of a valid detection to include laser emissions, infrared excess from large-scale energy use, anomalies suggesting megastructures, and physical artifacts, meaning the rulebook now covers more than a blip on a radio telescope. What's notable is what the document explicitly excludes, stating outright that these protocols govern astronomical detections of intelligence from beyond our solar system and do not apply to atmospheric UAP observations. The scientific community drew a hard line between something out there and something in our own sky. In the same week, the Pentagon was releasing files about exactly the second category. Moving on, a new theoretical study published this week is asking a question that sounds almost too basic for modern physics. What if black holes aren't black holes at all? The standard model says a collapsing massive star crushes itself down past a point of no return, forming a singularity hidden behind an event horizon, the boundary beyond which nothing, not even light, can escape. But the new research proposes that in at least some cases, that collapse might not produce a true singularity. And the object we've been calling a black hole could be something structurally different wearing the same disguise. It's early and theoretical, but it's the kind of paper that, if it holds up, doesn't just tweak the model. It literally rewrites the whole object. Moving on, Lake Champlain's most famous resident is back in the headlines. Filmmakers Kelly Tabor and Richard Rossi say they may have accidentally captured footage of Champ while filming something else entirely on the lake, and the clip is making the rounds online, though skeptics are already pointing out the same issues that come up with almost every lake monster video imaginable. A wake that could belong to a number of known animals, an angle that doesn't give you a clean look, and a recording that ends right as things get interesting. Worth knowing as context, Tabor and Rossi have a documentary tied to the footage heading to Amazon Prime this summer. Champ has been part of the folklore around the lake since the 1600s. It survived a P.T. Barnum publicity stunt in the 1870s and outlasted just about every skeptic who's tried to put it to bed. And this week, it's back in the conversation again. Moving on, Operation Spirit Seeker's paranormal team has expanded its work into cryptid territory for the first time, traveling to an area near Statesville, North Carolina, to look into local reports of unusual activity. The team, which has historically focused on haunted locations, set up game cameras along a wooded tree line on property they had previously investigated for other reasons. And equipment is staying in place for several weeks to monitor activity over time rather than relying on a single night. Nothing dramatic has been captured yet, and the team itself has said this is early stage work. So we'll keep an eye on it. For now, this is the start of an investigation, not the payoff. Moving on, a new study suggests the San Andreas fault system in Southern California is under more stress right now than at any point in the last 1,000 years. The focus is at Cajon Pass, the spot where the San Andreas and the San Jacinto faults intersect, where researchers found that the accumulated stress has been building for centuries and has now reached levels outside anything in the historical record. That doesn't mean anything imminent, and the researchers were careful about that distinction. But it does mean the system holding back one of the most consequential fault lines in the country is more loaded than it's been in a millennium. So, Jake, SETI, rewriting its first contact rulebook, a paper asking whether black holes are actually black holes, new Champ footage, a Dogman investigation just getting underway in North Carolina, and California's biggest fault under more stress than it's seen in 1,000 years. What's sticking with you on this week's Quick Hits?
I'm pretty sure that's pronounced San Jacinto.
Jacinto, huh?
Because it's like the San Joaquin Valley.
That makes sense.
Kind of the pronunciation. I believe there's a lot of Hispanic words or Spanish words and names and stuff like that in California, especially Southern California. But yeah, it can be hard to pronounce some things. A lot of Native American ones too. But I'm as a California native, obviously I don't live there anymore, but that is very concerning because gosh, if the big one hits, it's gonna kill so many people because that area is so freaking populated. It would be a horrible disaster. Like really, really bad. Probably, it depends on where it hits, how big it is, how long it is, but the earthquake, but it could be in the death toll of millions because of how populated that area is, which would be absolutely catastrophic. So yeah, no, very concerning stuff. It's kind of along the same lines of, maybe death toll in like, the tens of thousands would be more realistic, but even still, that's horrific. It'd be in the same sort of a catastrophe as like, Yellowstone erupting or just blowing up, like is theorized it could do at some point. It's just, catastrophic devastation. But yeah, very, very concerning. But that being said, I mean, people still live there. I mean, when we were there in Southern California, last 3 years doing, wrapping up my Navy time, I mean, it felt like an earthquake every month, and they were big and you feel them off the coast and they go rumbling through the base. Like, I'm in a big, long warehouse and it just like, you can just hear it shaking through the building and then out the other side. Right. And it was from, 5-10 miles off the coast. But, yeah, because I mean, that's a problem too, because if it's off the coast, it can cause a tsunami, all kinds of stuff, right? Really bad situations. And then, of course, a bunch of naval bases are down there too. So bad stuff. Moving on to Dogman is interesting. I very doubtful that they're gonna get anything, but it's I mean, but at the same time, I mean, people would say the same thing if we went to go, over to, that property by Elmwood and put up some game trail cameras and try to see Bigfoot or, if a wormhole opens up or something like that. People are gonna be like, "Yeah, probably not gonna see anything," and you're probably right, but, any amount of time spent outdoors and off screens is probably good, regardless
Very
of what
good.
it's for, unless it's like, murdering people, which isn't good. But so yeah, so good for them. Hopefully they get something. Um, the the new Champ footage, that's interesting. I would like to see this quote unquote accidentally filmed Champ. Um, I don't know. Lake Champlain is a big lake, so there's definitely room for a sea monster to be hiding, or I guess in this case, a lake monster to be hiding. But, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm curious what the fish population is in Lake Champlain, because if there's, anything that could have, like, monster sturgeon or big old catfish or something like that, who knows, but oh, let's see, your screen sharing.
Yeah, there's not a lot.
Just a
They're
red
saving.
circle.
Yeah, it's this red circle of stupidity. But it's there's not a lot of footage out because they are saving all the good stuff, right?
Sure.
Everything that I looked into, this is pretty much the image that I found. You can see right here, photo courtesy of Kelly Tabor and Richard Rossi. These are the people who are putting out the thing on Amazon Prime this summer. Um, I'll probably check it out. When it comes out, we'll see what's there. I'm not gonna say that it's nothing yet. I mean, honestly, if I had to put my money on it, Occam's razor says that that's probably just a group of water plants, right? That's what it looks like to me. And it actually looks more like a fish than anything that Champ is supposed to be. But yeah, that's pretty much it on that. Yeah, I got asked the question a month ago. Somebody sent me a nice, just a really heartwarming message on Facebook Messenger. Just a real heartwarming one. Just saying that the show has gone to shit since we no longer talk about cryptids. And I was like, hey man, I apologize for that, but the fact is that there's just not a lot of cryptid news going on that's verifiable.
Right.
And of course he was like, oh, it's bullshit. Blah 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 blah. There's this and this and this. It's like, yeah, but it's not verifiable. Just because it pops up on, some blog that some guy says that this happened, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's got to have coverage. It's got to have, multiple sources. It's got to, I'm not going to take some, indie blog and say that it's news, because it's not. I mean, it's
Right.
interesting. I'll read it. If anybody wants to send me some stuff and of their personal work, I'll take a look at it. I like that stuff, but I can't pass it off as news. Right. So
Right.
gotta kind of lean into the mainstream a little bit and throw out there what people are actually talking about. I mean, if I did a show on all the things that all the little groups are doing around the world, with cryptids and all the weird stuff, I mean, this show would be nothing but quick hits and it'd be 6 hours long.
Sure. You're right.
So we gotta draw a line somewhere. And so when I do see something cryptid related, I like to throw it up. I am the person that goes to the BFRO and looks at the new sightings, and sees if there's anything really interesting, see if the local news is talking about it. If enough things line up, then throw it on an episode. And that's just what happened this week with the Dogman and the Champ stuff. There was enough places talking about it. Seems like it's legit. There's a real documentary or something, some content coming out on Amazon about the Rossi footage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth talking about. But yeah, other than that, the San Joaquito. If you've been listening to this show for anything any week, you will know that I am not a pronunciator. I'm very bad at it. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it is what it is.
I mean, we speak English. We don't speak Spanish. So if we spoke Spanish, we'd probably nail that pronunciation. But then we'd also might mess up other pronunciations of English words. So who knows?
Listen, man,
English
I mess up English words all the time. My inability to read things out loud and pronunciate it correctly does not draw the line at a different language.
Yeah, it just adds more flavor to the mispronunciation.
Simple as that. Simple as that. Anyways, you ready for the briefing?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, let's dive into some missing scientists again. All right, let's get into our briefing. On May 28th, a hiker in the McGaffey Bridge area of New Mexico's Carson National Forest found human remains, which state police confirmed through the Office of the Medical Investigator belonged to Melissa Casillas, the Los Alamos National Laboratory Administrative Assistant who vanished almost exactly a year earlier on June 26, 2025. She had dropped her husband off at work that morning, said she'd return home to work remotely because she'd forgotten her employee badge, and was last seen walking alone along a highway near her home that afternoon. Both of her phones turned up at her house, factory reset, with her purse and keys left behind. Investigators found a handgun beside her remains, and cause and manner of death are still undetermined. A former FBI agent who reviewed the case publicly suggested Casillas was likely dealing with a mental health crisis, pointing to the distance she walked and the belongings she left behind as signs of someone in distress rather than someone who was taken. But Casillas' daughter has pushed back hard, saying her mother did not own a gun. The family also noted the area where her remains were found had already been searched once before without success, which raises its own uncomfortable question about how she ended up there and when. Her case has been linked publicly to the broader pattern of dead and missing scientists this show has followed since the count was 5, and her case closing, if it does, won't resolve anything about the others. It may simply remove one name from an open list while the underlying questions stay exactly where they are. That pattern got a new and stranger theory attached to it this week, when former FBI agent Ben Hansen publicly raised the possibility that some kind of psychological energy weapon, sometimes called voice-to-skull technology, could be a contributing factor in some of these disappearances. He was careful about it, saying investigators haven't found anyone describing classic symptoms like hearing voices, but raising the possibility of something subtler, producing anxiety, or what he called a vague state, the kind of psychological condition that causes someone to wander away from their life without conscious intention. That makes the theory harder to dismiss outright, is the comparison he drew to Havana syndrome, the cluster of neurological symptoms experienced by American diplomats abroad, which the U.S. government has acknowledged as real even while disputing its cause. If a confirmed government-acknowledged technology can produce serious neurological effects without a clear physical mechanism, Hansen's argument is that something similar isn't outside the realm of possibility here. None of this proves anything about Casillas specifically, but you now have one case closing with a discovery that raises more questions than it answers, alongside a new framework floated by someone with real investigative experience that would connect every other case on the list in a way nobody has previously been able to substantiate. So, Jake, A year of searching ends with a body and a gun the family says wasn't hers, in a spot that had already been searched once, and now a former FBI agent is floating psychological weapons as a possible explanation for the whole pattern. Where does your head go on this, man?
Oh, shoot. I would trust the FBI agent because that's the weirdest thing to say if it's completely unsubstantiated.
Well, voice to skull is something that, well, I would say Jeff probably talked about it the most, right? Voice to skull is a real technology. That's real shit.
I don't mean it's not a real technology. I meant that that's a very strange thing to just kind of throw out there as a possible explanation. Not, you could have all kinds of theories or, oh, well, it was probably depression or it was probably short-term memory loss or it was probably this or it was probably that. But then to just have someone with an FBI tag attached to them say, well, it could have been voice to skull technology. It's like, why would you say that unless there's something behind that? It's a very interesting thing to just kind of throw out there and say, as a theory as to what's going on with these scientists. It's like, okay, what information do you have? Can you share that with the class? Right. So that would be very interesting to find if that's the cause of this, right? If people are being tested on, experimented on. I mean, it's happened before.
It
Tons of
has.
examples of the government messing with people before, regardless of their status or anything like that, right? So interesting.
The thing that really stuck out to me about this is this seems to be an overlapping story between two topics that we've talked about heavily on the show. One we talked about very early in the show's history, and one that we've been talking about for months now, right?
Right.
And that is the missing 401 phenomenon and this astrophysicist propulsion scientist missing situation.
Right.
This did happen, or she was found in the McGaffey Ridge area of the Carson National Forest. Now, I there's not a ton of people that have been in my studio, but Jake, you have, right? And on my wall right over here, I have a huge map with all the little points of the missing 401 phenomenon all across the country.
Right.
And McGaffey Bridge in the Carson National Forest is definitely up there, right? So
Sure.
if we know anything about missing 401, national forests are dangerous. There's some odd shit going on there. Now, is it that people are going missing while they're there, or is it people going there to go missing, right? Or is it probably a mixture of both? I think it just adds another layer of strangeness to this whole story. I think it's very interesting. I think it's very interesting that she was found in a national forest. But I think the real interesting part, which you see a lot of in the Missing 401, I have the entire series of books, by the way.
What, that the area was searched and then she was discovered in the already searched area?
Yeah. That's where I was getting to. Sorry, I just had to show off the books. These are all Missing 401 books.
Jeez.
Written by David Paulides, and I have been through them all. And I can tell you there is a theme to a lot of missing 401 cases, and that is that people's remains, or even alive, show up in areas that were searched already. And it's not just like, the 11-year-old went over there and looked. No, this was, professional search crews. They went through the area multiple times. And when the person is finally found, when the remains are found, they're found in an area that's been documented as searched by professionals. And they're found in a way where even non-professionals would have been able to find them. Just
they're
right
like sitting
there
on a log or something like that, or under a tree, completely exposed. It's not like,
a
dog found a shoe poking up out of the dirt, right? It's like their whole corpse is there, right?
The whole corpse. So, and the missing 401 phenomenon is very strange because there is a very good mixture of improper decomposition, right? So someone's been missing for a year. Well, their decomposition only shows 5 weeks, or their decomposition shows, something that's more akin to 3 years, right? There's a certain amount of bleaching done on bones, massive bones, marrow gone, without actual fracture.
That, and then also that it's like, oh, this person died of dehydration, but they have a full water bottle in their backpack type stuff, right? There's always some circumstance that just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
Like in this circumstance, it's having a gun right next to. Well, a murderer wouldn't kill someone and then leave the firearm with the body, right? Generally, it gets moved or stored or thrown away somewhere else. Or they're just like, oh, well, this person could have used the firearm to signal for help or something, right? Anything with that firearm, but then it will be found with, a full magazine and not a single round missing or something like that. There's always some kind of very strange circumstance around it. And yeah, for this one, it's absolutely the gun, especially if the daughter is correct in saying that her mom didn't own a firearm. So it's like weird.
Now, one thing I was unable to confirm, and I think if I'm correct, I'm trying to do some quick research here before I sound stupid, but I'll just say it out loud. Ben Hansen, he is the same guy, right? Ben Hansen was the FBI agent who came up with the idea, and I just confirmed it. He is the same guy from the TV series Fact or Fake Paranormal Files. So, one thing to keep in mind here, Ben Hansen, this guy, okay? I, for some reason, didn't catch on to this when I wrote the script. Ben Hansen, not putting anything against him, all right? I just want to make sure people realize this when they're taking this information in. Ben Hansen is very much in the television world. He is an entertainer. Not that he's not a smart human being, not that he's not a thorough or was a thorough FBI agent. I don't know. But he does have a lot of projects that he works on. So I'm just curious if there's anything in the works right now that he's trying to work on where, maybe this leads down a path to where you're watching more of his TV shows. That's the only concern I have. Nothing against him at all. I've never met the man, so I can't judge him. But I just want to put that out there as a cautionary bit. Don't take the FBI title at face value, I guess, what I would say.
So, yeah, then that would make sense why he would say something like that that's just kind of off the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, I mean, all you got is theories, right? Because, I mean,
and
an investigation happens and they just kind of determine that the person is, in fact, dead. How they got there, no one knows. And so you can only really throw out theories.
Yeah, man. And that's really all we talk about here. Jake and I don't have answers. We just talk about things that make sense and look at past things that we discussed here on the show or discussed in personal conversations with each other. And Missing 411 is something that we've talked about a lot. We should talk about it more because it's an ongoing phenomenon, but it's I think this is just the perfect time to bring it back up because you could definitely see where these two topics mesh. Now, again, Missing 411 is not the answer to all of these scientists going missing. I just want to be clear about that. I think it's interesting that Casillas's end to her story, I hate to put it that way, lines up with a lot of stuff from the Missing 411.
Mm-hmm.
You ready to go deep, bud?
Yeah, I'm ready to go deep.
You better get ready, buddy. Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's go deep. I want to walk through this week carefully because 3 things happened that on their own would each be a major story, and together they tell you something about where this entire conversation has actually arrived. Start with June 12th when Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day opened in theaters nationwide and took the #1 spot at the box office, pulling in $44 million domestically and just under $93 million worldwide. Spielberg's best opening weekend for an original film, not a sequel, not an adaptation, since Saving Private Ryan in 1998. The film follows a whistleblower pushing for full disclosure to the entire world at once, with marketing built around a single line. The truth belongs to 7 billion people. Reviews were solid, 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, though audience reaction was more mixed. A B on Cinema Score, but the opening weekend numbers say something clear on their own. A mainstream American audience in large numbers paid to spend 2.5 hours with a story about the government finally telling the truth about non-human intelligence. On the exact same day, the Department of War releases its third batch of declassified UAP files under the Pursue program, and this one has the most substantial yet, with 826 megabytes of documents and 4.6 gigabytes of video. Among the contents was a report dated June 5th and signed by John Kozlowski, director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, describing an incident from October 2023 in which law enforcement officials observed what Kozlowski's own report calls an orange mother orb launching smaller red orbs. And his report states that roughly 40% of all reported UAP phenomena still lack a reasonable explanation. The release also included a 1992 internal CIA document that finally puts an official number on something researchers have suspected for decades. Secret U-2 and Oxcart spy plane test flights accounted for more than half of all UFO reports during the late 50s and most of the 60s. And Project Blue Book gave the public deliberately false explanations to protect those classified programs. The government is now on record admitting that a significant portion of the fundamental UFO mythology from the Cold War era was a direct result of its own classified aircraft testing, hidden behind cover stories the public was never supposed to question. The detail matters for how you read everything else this week because it's simultaneously a debunking of old cases and a confirmation that the government has a documented, admitted history of lying about this exact subject for exactly this long. Both are true at once, and that's worth sitting with rather than resolving too quickly in either direction. Then, 3 days later, came the announcement I think is actually the most significant development of the entire week, even though it's gotten less attention than the file release or the movie. The White House, working with AARO, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI, and the broader intelligence community, formally stood up a new body called the UAP Science Advisory Council, sitting underneath a newly created interagency UAP governance board that held its first meeting the same week. Harvard theoretical physicist Avi Loeb, founder of the Galileo Project, was tasked with assembling and leading the council. And he built an 11-person team spanning astrophysics, oceanography, molecular biology, anthropology, psychology, instrumentation, and artificial intelligence with a stated mission to apply rigorous scientific method and AI-assisted analysis to the declassified data, emphasizing better new data over relitigating old, unverifiable footage. Here's the detail that reframes the whole story. One of the 11 names on the council is Michael Shermer, founder and publisher of Skeptic magazine, a man who has spent decades professionally debunking exactly this kind of claim, and who holds a standard public wager with Loeb himself over the nature of the interstellar object Oumuamua. Putting Shermer on a federally convened UAP science board is a deliberate institutional decision to build organized doubt into the structure from day one, and he's said his role is to bring methodological rigor and make sure mundane explanations are fully exhausted before anyone draws anomalous conclusions. That's a healthy thing for a body like this to have built in, but it means whatever this council eventually concludes will be harder to dismiss as a foregone conclusion stacked with true believers. Lay the three things next to each other. A film about full global disclosure becomes the most successful original movie of one of the most successful directors in American history. The government releases its largest UAP data dump yet on the same day, including an admission that it deliberately lied to the public for over a decade during the Cold War. And 3 days later, the federal government quietly assembles its first dedicated scientific body to study this subject, structured specifically to resist runaway speculation. That is not three coincidences. That is a culture and a government arriving at the same place from different directions in the same single week. After years of pressure from journalists, whistleblowers, and shows exactly like this one, what happens next depends on what the council does with the data it's been handed, and whether the next Pursue release, expected in roughly a month, moves past fuzzy video into something more substantial. But the structure of how this is unfolding tells you something on its own. Disclosure, whatever it ends up meaning, is no longer a single dramatic moment everyone is waiting for. It's becoming a process with institutions, oversight, and a built-in skeptic happening in public in real time. A genuinely different shape than anything this conversation has had before. So, Jake, Spielberg's biggest original opening in decades, the government admitting it lied about UFOs to protect spy plane operations, and a federal science council with its own resident skeptic. All inside 1 week after everything we've covered since February. How does it land with you, bud?
So at what point in 50 years, I guess, they're going to say, oh, and then all of we were lying to you about the UFO drops to cover these spy planes that we had, orbs and triangles and all kinds of stuff, and Tic Tacs and all kinds of spy vehicles. Yeah, we're covering up the programs by lying to you and saying that they were UFOs. That's where my mind goes with it. But, I mean, it goes laying into credence with what we've said on here, that I wouldn't be surprised if it's all a cover-up for aircraft that we have that we don't want, other countries to know about and the general public to know about and Google to know about and all kinds of stuff. So just say that it's, just say that it's alien spaceships or whatever, right? Or that we don't know, or that there's nothing. And then all the disclosure happening. Yeah, I haven't seen the Disclosure movie. I'll definitely have to. I don't really go to movie theaters all that much anymore. And I don't really like crowds and feeling confined. So I don't go to movie theaters, but when it comes out on Prime Video, I'll definitely rent it and give it a watch. But I don't know. I'm not expecting to get blown away by it. Or are you expecting to get blown away by it, Jeremy?
No, but I'm expecting to like it, honestly. For some reason I forgot this guy's name. Trying to Google the name of this astrophysicist, and it's gonna bother the shit out of me, and for some reason I'm not able to bring it up.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
It is.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. Jeez, man. We'll get into that in a second, because I have a rant.
Also known as the Black Science Guy, is what I've heard.
You know what? Never mind. We'll just jump into it real quick.
Okay.
You know what gets me about Neil deGrasse Tyson and this whole UAP thing?
What's that?
It's not that he's interested now. It's how he's got there. For almost 2 decades, this man's entire public persona on UFOs was condescension or condescending.
He is very condescending, yes.
Yeah. And in 2021, he told people who believed in UFOs to take a course in stargazing, another in atmospheric phenomena, and a third in cognitive bias. That's not, I have questions. That's, you're an idiot and I'm smarter than you. Right. I hate that. I hate that shit. Fine. That's a position. I can respect a consistent skeptic, I guess. Right. But when the wind changes, right? Congress holds hearing, whistleblowers testify under oath, the country gets UAP fever, and suddenly he's telling Chris Cuomo he decided to become a participant in the conversation instead of a debunker, citing how credible the whistleblowers seemed. He's got a book coming out now. One that opens with him saying he's wanted to be abducted by aliens since he was a kid. Conveniently timed for a guy who spent years mocking the exact audience that book is now marketed to. And here's the part that really gets me, right? He never accounted for the reversal. I fucking can't stand this. No, I was wrong to be dismissive. No reckoning with the people he contended for with years, or two for years. He just pivoted. Jake, smooth as anything. Like the last 2 decades of mockery didn't happen. Bullshit. Even his own community noticed it. People pointing out he's engaging with the crowd he spent nearly 2 decades dismissing as arrogance. Now that it appears it just fits his interests, I'm sorry, man. That's not science to me. It's not. And this just goes to show that he wasn't doing science in the first place, right? Because now all of a sudden it just makes sense, right? There's really good evidence out there, and all these people are just stand up people, and we should take their word for it. But literally called everybody fucking stupid. And I swear, oh dude, I'm not looking forward to when the book comes out. One, I won't buy it. That's 100%.
You won't?
I won't. I
Oh
won't.
my
And
goodness.
I buy pretty much everything, right? And
Right, yeah.
I mean, I can't take him seriously.
Right.
He's spent so much time with my interest in the unknown, debunking it and calling us kooks and cracks. And honestly, I respected him for that. I've been on this show and said multiple times that I respect the guy for what he does. He's a good scientist. He comes out with really intelligent things to say. But when you do a 180, now that the topic is hot, now that Congress is coming out with it, now that there's whistleblowers speaking in front of Congress and documentaries coming out, dude's just making money, man. That's what it is to me now. And he's lost all credibility.
He pivoted like a politician does.
He does. It very much, man. So I do have a couple Neil deGrasse Tyson books, and I've read through them, and the guy comes off as extremely intelligent. But I cannot respect the immediate 180. I can't.
Without saying, look, I was wrong.
Right.
Right.
And
pretending
he doesn't.
like it didn't exist. Right. Sure.
And now he's just writing an entire book about it, and it's due in a month or two. It's like, come on, man. That's bullshit. Stop it. You're a fucking fiend for the camera, man. Calm down.
You know he's going to make a boatload of money on it, too.
Oh, yeah, dude. People are going to eat that shit up because it has his name on it. Of course. Yeah. Of course. And honestly, man, if it was any other topic, like I had a lot of respect for Neil deGrasse Tyson, and a lot of people, Jeff mostly, I think, told me the guy was complete bullshit. And I fought for him. I did. And I just can't stand it. I can't stand it. I was wrong. I'll say that out loud right now. I was wrong on Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I don't follow or subscribe to a lot of his stuff because I've always found him to be very condescending is a good way to put it. Like very, I'm smarter than you, and it doesn't seem like he's willing to educate more people than he's more willing to be an I told you so kind of a guy. And it kind of comes out in his explanations. And so I don't really subscribe to a lot of the things he puts out. I'll just see clips every once in a while. But then that, and then some stuff where instead of when he gets asked a question by any, host of a TV show and he doesn't know the answer to it, instead of saying like, honestly, that's not my area of expertise, or I don't know, or you should check out this person for that answer, or whatever it is, he's been known to just make stuff up on the spot. And it's very weird. And it's like, because, I'm a professional at work, but I'm willing to tell people if I don't know the answer to their question that I don't know, or that I could look into it and come back to them type stuff. I'm not that sort of guy. And so it really gives me a weird taste in my mouth when people are that way, when they're just like, oh, well, I have to be perceived as incredibly intelligent. And so instead of saying, hey, I don't know this, they're willing to just lie. Right. And so it's like, that's strange. I don't like that. So for those two reasons, I haven't really gotten into him and, anything he says. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, you're just one of those sorts of guys, right? Whatever. But yeah, I can understand the frustration though. I'm sorry that your hero has been cast out for you,
man, like, I mean, I've defended him a lot. I really have. So I guess the most defending I've ever done with him was against like Bill Nye. Right. Everyone's like, oh, Bill Nye says this, Bill Nye says that.
Oh,
and,
Bill Nye is just a TV show host.
People were saying, oh, Bill Nye is telling us to wear face diapers for COVID. And it's like, do you know Bill Nye, he has a bachelor's degree in a science field. He doesn't have a PhD, he doesn't have a master's, right? I think it was mechanical engineering or something along those lines. I don't know if you can Google it real quick, but
Sure.
I want to say it was in. I don't. It's an engineering degree. It's not even a science degree. He's not a science guy.
Bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Yep.
Is that what it is?
From Cornell.
Bachelor's.
Yep.
From Cornell, and he. I know. Okay, so if I remember correctly, he did study under Carl Sagan, right? Who is a very, very intelligent, or was a very intelligent individual. Carl Sagan. He has a book called Demon Haunted World, right? It's basically it's a book that okay, in the most not direct way of explaining this book without getting into too much detail, it basically says pump the brakes on all the UFO, Bigfoot, weird sciencey stuff, and just understand that science, there's a reason why science has a point of view on this stuff. And Carl Sagan always broke it down really, really well. Bill Nye's not that guy, right? So whenever somebody would say Bill Nye, I'd be like, dude, come on, man. At least like go to somebody with an actual fucking education in science. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Well,
you know?
I don't know. I can agree with you and then also disagree because you know an awful lot of stuff about, I would say more than the average guy about I can't even think of the name, but because of this podcast, just a bunch of stuff about a bunch of things, right? I don't think you necessarily have to
I do.
have a degree in a field to know something about that, right? Apparently he is very smart. The AI overview said that he worked as an engineer at Boeing where he invented a hydraulic resonance suppressor tube used in Boeing 747 airplanes.
But that's engineering.
And consulted for the U.S. Department of Justice on fighter jets. And he's currently the chief executive officer of the Planetary Society. I don't know what that is, but whatever. So,
but none of this is telling you that you should take medical advice from this guy.
Right, but you can gain knowledge over time without having to have a degree behind it, right? But then on the other side of that coin, you might be incredibly intelligent, but in a specific field, and you might not have, a degree or anything like that in another field because you just don't know anything about it, right? So I can see both sides of that, where I could be very intelligent in a specific field without going to school for it. And if someone were to say, oh, well, don't trust his word because I don't have a degree in electrical engineering, but I can tell you an awful lot about electronics, right? If someone were to say, oh, don't take his word for it, he doesn't have a degree. And it's like, okay, well, I got 15 years of experience. So, what's that supposed to say, right? Because I don't have a 4-year degree, right? So I can see that side of things. But then also, just because I'm very smart when it comes to electronics doesn't mean I could wire your house, right? So yes, I can tell you an awful lot about the electronics on an airplane, but I don't know the first thing about installing a circuit breaker panel on a house and would absolutely hire electricians so that I don't burn my house down, right? So it's like in the same way someone's like, oh yeah, I need help with the wiring of my boat. I'm like, okay, well, I don't do that, so I don't know what to tell you. And he's like, oh, well, it's the same thing. I was like, I guess. I don't know. I couldn't tell you that right off the bat, right? And it's just like, it's like, oh, well, I need help with the wires and the lights. And I'm like, okay, well, get a controller and plug your lights in. And he's just like, oh, well, I had one, but I did something wrong and it burned down. I was like, I don't know, pull up a YouTube video. I'm not a boat technician. If I was, I would be working on boats and not airplanes. So I don't know if I could help you just because I'm good at this job, right? So I can see both sides of that coin, right? Of Bill Nye, but I'll trust you because your field is mechanical engineering and you talk about science on a TV show and your field is astrophysics. In both areas, you guys are incredibly intelligent, but in those fields, right? So that's where I go with people like that. And that would go towards politicians too. If they start spouting out medical advice, be like, bring the doctor on here whose job it is to do this. I don't want to hear it from you.
So, all right. Nobody listening to this should hear things that I say and take that to heart. Everyone should think for themselves. I'll say that out loud. I do not claim to be a scientist. I am not a scientist. I read a lot of books, and I like to think I am a critical thinker. That is it, right? And then I work on taking my thoughts, my critical thoughts, and putting it into something where we can communicate about it. I do not have a master's or PhD, right? So I don't have a footing in a lot of this stuff, in a lot of the stuff that we talk about. I was an aircraft electrician, but was I a really good one? No. You know? And I did it for 8 years, and that's it, right? Am I really good at anything? Probably not, right? I wrote a book, but it took me 2 years to do it. Right? There's another book that I'm almost done with, and I've been working on that for damn near 5 years. And I play smart on a podcast. That's pretty much it, right? Because these are the things that I obsess over, and I could talk about them and talk confidently about them. I would not say anybody should take anything I say as 100% truth, because it's not, right? We talk about things like Bigfoot and aliens all the time on here, and there's no way that we can know about this shit.
True. Yeah.
Right? I mean, I could come up with, connecting points and make things sound good, and I can convince myself, and I can convince people who are listening, right? But that's all I am. Should I be an authority on any of this? No. But, and I get it, right? People can, I call it education by osmosis, right?
Sure.
You're not learning it through an official format like going to college or anything. Some of the smartest people I've ever known in my life failed out of school, like didn't even graduate high school. I mean, I know some brilliant people that never even finished high school. People that are, one of the most smartest people I've ever known in my life. This was years ago, but he worked at GameStop. The dude was so brilliant. Shout out to Jake, by the way. Another Jake in my life.
Another Jake.
Another Jake.
Oh,
yeah.
My goodness.
My neighbor's name is Jake.
2 Owenses, 3 Jakes. My goodness.
But it's, we're entertainers, right? We like to talk about this stuff. And that's the same thing I'm trying to say about Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't appreciate his pivot without an explanation for it. It just sounds like he's out for the money grab. And man, I've looked for it. I've looked for the explanation. It's just not out there. And, if he does come out with one, it seems a little too late now, But while you were talking, I looked for the book that I was referring to by Carl Sagan. It's called Carl Sagan's The Demon Haunted World. And I brought up a brief description of it because I wanted to give a proper description of the book, a book that I read 10 years ago now. The Demon Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, 1995, is Carl Sagan's defense of scientific skepticism and critical thinking against pseudoscience, superstition, and irrationalism. He uses examples like UFO abduction claims, faith healing, and alien visitation myths to illustrate how easily the mind can be fooled, and offers his famous baloney detection kit, a toolkit of logical and evidentiary standards for evaluating claims at its core. The book argues that scientific reasoning isn't just for scientists. It's a vital safeguard for democracy and society against deception and magical thinking. Now, do I believe every single thing that Carl Sagan says? No, but I like the way that he delivers it. There's a lot of evidence behind it. There's a lot of confidence behind it. There's a lot of things where you can say, I don't know if that sounds right. But then when you do your own research, you're like, oh shit, okay, well, it does work. And that's kind of like how Neil deGrasse Tyson was for me. And that's why I kept, pulled people off of, or tried to pull people off of Bill Nye, because I hate when fucking people quote Bill Nye. That is a pet peeve of mine.
I don't think I've never heard anyone quote Bill Nye.
I have. and most of it was around 2020. It's just stupid. It really is. Anybody that came to me about a celebrity saying this or that, and I'm just like, dude, go away. Shut up. I don't care if he plays a scientist on TV, man. Shut up. Okay. Anyways,
But
rant.
keep in mind, though, someone playing a role on TV, I mean, that's kind of the same problems that I have with shows like Skinwalker Ranch,
Oh,
where
yeah,
they
absolutely.
may have had hardcore jobs in the science field or in the FBI or in the CIA or whatever, right? But right now, all I see is an actor on a TV show, and it's really hard for me to see that and be like, this is a more along the lines of a documentary of things that are occurring at this location. I can't see that. All I can see is people who once were probably stellar in their fields and now they're just actors. So it's like the reverse for me, where it's an actor pretending to be a scientist, and now it's a scientist pretending to be something, or trying to be that, but also just acting on a TV show, right? And so you can see where my brain goes and why it's so difficult for me to take something like that and be like, oh, this is real,
Yeah. I really try my best to find, whenever I talk about Skinwalker Ranch, I try my best to find sources that are not the television. There's just some things like the 1.6 gigahertz signal is a huge, it's a huge piece of evidence for the true strangeness of Skinwalker Ranch. But there's really good books written by real scientists. Colm Kelleher, James Lukatsky, right? Those two right there. They teamed up and wrote books. Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, and Colm Kelleher wrote with George Knapp the Hunt for the Skinwalker. Phenomenal books where you're going to find a multitude of information broken down in ways that would make that TV show look like a child's play, right? But I totally agree, right? Nobody should be watching a show and taking anything seriously with a guy who calls himself Dragon. I hate that I'm talking shit about people I've never met, including Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? But you ever seen the Step Brothers meme,
Yeah.
right? Where he's like, "Call me Dragon,"
Yeah.
right? Or Nighthawk,
Yeah.
or whatever it is, right?
Sure.
I gotta share this with you. You're gonna dig this. Right? Can you see it?
Let me expand. Yes. I made that.
Did you?
I did.
You made this one?
I 100% did.
Really?
Yes. I sent
That's
that
awesome.
to you guys when we first got started with it or something like that. Or I
just
made a
pulled this off.
version of that because I was like, gosh, that reminds me of freaking Step Brothers. Dude. So I was like talking about how dumb that is, right? It's like, I mean, I get it. It's like on the podcast, right? It's like, hey, I'm not actually Jake. I'm Jacob, right? But I go by Jake. But we have Kenzar, right? It's not her birth name, right? If people didn't know, that's not her birth name. But we called her Kenzar on the show. Like, I get it. But for that one, it seems so out of place and strange. And for what? How did you get that nickname besides you just decided I would like to be called this one day?
Yeah, right.
It was like, it's so silly. Yeah, it's like,
I'm sure he's a great guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's a blast. I'm sure like just having a drink with the guy and picking his brain. I mean, the guy spends time on Skinwalker Ranch. I'd really like to talk to him.
Sure.
and kind of hear what he has to say about his time on the ranch. But call me Dragon. It would be one of the first questions I ask him. Like, hey man,
what's up with the nickname?
What's up with the nickname, bud?
Yeah.
All right. That's pretty much it. I'm done shit talking about people.
I love the rant that you went on. That was funny. That was unexpected and funny.
Man, I've been holding it in for weeks.
Yeah,
I have, and I've been like, there's gonna be a topic that comes up where it's gonna be appropriate, and I feel like this was just appropriate time for it. It just fit right in. I was so butthurt about the Neil deGrasse Tyson 180 on UFOs. And I'm like, oh, man, why'd you have to do that? I had so much respect for you, man. So much respect for you. And now it literally just sounds like you're in it for the money. And like,
well, I agree that people can change their minds. Like,
yes.
Shoot, I changed my mind. And I'm willing to say, when I changed my mind, you know what? I think I was wrong on this approach, that I was coming out of a place of ignorance. I think I'm wrong. Like I spent a very long time completely crapping on the idea of UFOs and of aliens.
Mhm.
And I'm willing to say that I was wrong in my hostility towards it, but I still don't believe that they're extraterrestrial aliens or beings from another planet or galaxy or star system or whatever, right? But I was wrong in saying that they didn't exist. And I'm willing to pivot towards, I think that I believe it's in a negative spiritual field. Yeah, but nice meme. But that people are in fact seeing something, right? Whereas at first I was like, "Oh, this is just mass delusion," right? Because
Yeah.
I've never seen anything, so that means it's fake, right? So, but I guess not. But I'm still not gonna concede and say, "Well, it's aliens." And even if they like landed on the White House lawn and opened up the hatch and crawled out, and there were like these slimy lizard creatures, right? I still wouldn't call them aliens. I would still say that it's probably a demonic sort of, whatever, right? But I would probably have to pivot again and be like, well, I guess there are something that are inside these craft, right? But I would tell people, hey, yeah, I was wrong on this because I'm not a researcher. I'm not a scientist. I don't study this sort of stuff. I'm just the layman and I'm telling you my thoughts. So I'm perfectly capable of being wrong. All right. I just don't think I am. And I don't think that many people, unless their job is lying to people, which we see a lot on TV, but they're not knowingly putting out disinformation. They're just incorrect, right? And so it would be a lot easier, a lot better of a pill to swallow for Mr. Tyson to put out, or Dr. Tyson, I don't know. I think he probably has a PhD in something, but
Definitely does.
for him to put out, I was incorrect, and I spent a long time being incorrect. And with new evidence, I am changing my position on aliens. And people would totally respect that, I believe, or UFOs or whatever it is. People would totally respect that and be like, as it turns out, when my mind was being changed, I decided I was going to start researching into it more, and I'm going to put that research into a book that would be put out, is going to be put out in so many months or whenever it's going to come out, right? People would respect that a heck of a lot more than just transitioning into the new camp and completely ignoring the fact that you have been a rabid wild animal when it came to the idea for so long. And now suddenly, oh yeah, no, of course UFOs are real. And of course, people see things and everything like that. And it's just like, so I can understand where that frustration for you comes from because it seems incredibly insincere. And like you said, just a money grab. It's like, oh, this is where the focus is now? Well, this is where I'm going to focus my energy on because this is what's going to make me money.
Right. And the simple fact that he's already producing a book for this, from my point of view, from somebody who loves these topics, I don't think you haven't spent enough time in the interested party portion of the argument to even put out a book. You spent so much time talking shit about it, debunking it, and then to just 180 and put a book out. How could you have even thought about it long enough to put a book out? That just goes to show that I can't read this book and say, man, he's really spent a shit ton of time thinking about this, no matter how smart it comes out.
Sure.
Like, you didn't even have time to think about your points on all this. Like, holy shit, man. It was when the first Pursue, or it was halfway between the first and the second Pursue drop, that he came out and said something like this. And it's like, okay. And you're already writing a book? Okay. Sure. Yeah, I'm not wasting my money on that. Like if he
Sure.
spent 10 years, 5 years even, sitting on the sidelines and learning about it, I may buy a book from the guy because he is extremely intelligent and he really knows how to say words and write words in a way that are very convincing.
How to say words and write words.
He does.
I know how to say words, but I don't know how to write words. So you got me.
He says words.
There are words that he says, that's for sure.
And it's very convincing. He's a very smart guy, right? But this whole pivot has really raised my bullshit detector, and the alarms are alarming, my friend. I will not be buying that book. But now, I mean, it's like, man, Couldn't I even take your point of view in anything you've ever said seriously now? I don't know, man. I just to come out and say, hey, this is some interesting shit. Like you said, this is interesting stuff. I'm going to look into this. Very interested in this. That would be the right approach. But to come out and be like, oh yeah, no, UFOs are real now, and I'm writing a book. Come on, man. Stop it. You silly little fuck. Stop it. Stop it, you silly man. And the amount of people when this book comes out that are going to quote it, there's going to be all over the news. It's going to be all over X. It's going to be all over Facebook. It's going to be all over in every fucking stupid community that I'm a part of. And I'm just going to roll my eyes and be like, you fucking people. Sorry. All right. Rant over, dude. I can't do this anymore. I hate being the guy that talks shit about other people. I really, really do. But it just lends the amount of frustration that I have in his pivot and how far he's taking it.
Right.
Like you said, people can pivot. People can change their mind. I change my mind all the time, just like you said. But to go in and then say that you're writing a book about it right away, come on, man. Come on, dude. Ugh, I don't know.
But
anyways,
you can't blame the guy for, running where the money is.
and he's going to make money.
Yeah.
He's going to.
Until he's dead, probably. I mean, until the day he dies, he's always going to be, in some atmosphere making money. So, yeah, I mean, you can't really blame him for that. Because, I mean, that's what we're doing, right? If we didn't care about listenership and views and stuff like that, we wouldn't talk about all this, discussion or this discussion and disclosure and all this sort of stuff about everything that's going on. It'd be like, oh, well, let's, keep focusing. Let's focus on Dogman when there's, tranches being dropped from the federal government on UFO stuff or UAPs, right? It would be it wouldn't make any sense. But at the same time, although we both have our own opinions on the topics that we talk about, I don't think either of us have been really in the ballpark of talking a bunch of crap about it, except when it comes to flat Earth. That's like the only thing where all of us were just like, yeah, you guys are fools, right? And then we got a lot of hate for it. Whole bunch of hate. People were really upset. All 10 flat earthers were really pissed off about it. But hey, and it would be weird if, something came out where the earth was flat and then you said, well, I'm releasing a book in 2 months about the flat earth because I've always known that it was flat.
Exactly my point.
They'd pull up freaking clips of you talking crap about it and lose their freaking minds, right? So it makes sense, right? And and then you'd lose all credibility and all respect because people would be like, yeah, you handled that so inappropriately. You can't do that, right? It's appropriate to say that you were wrong or that you changed your mind or that you followed the science and the research and the evidence, right? That's what would be appropriate. And to leave that part out, even if it's true, is weird. And people don't like that because it feels deceptive.
I'm going to announce it now. I don't know when it's going to be out. Give me a year, right? Because it's such a difficult topic for me. I am going to do a Project Jackalope documentary on flat Earth.
Oh yeah.
I am not a flat earther. Okay, not at all.
Sure.
But I just want to show. Actually, I should call this the Neil deGrasse Tyson experiment. Find out how long it took him to write his book, and then do the same thing for flat Earth from my point of view, right? And show you how easy it is to come up with bullshit and sell it as your opinion. Now, I'll go on the record. I'm not a flat earther, man. Okay, but when I create the documentary, it's gonna sound like I'm very educated in flat Earth. It's just when I do my documentaries, I don't tell it from a point of, hey, this is how I feel about it. This is all the information, right? Bam,
Sure.
Throw it out there. I've read flat Earth books. Like I grabbed 2 of them off my shelf just because the amount of information that's out there on flat Earth is astronomical, right? Here's one book, right?
It's thick.
This
How
one's
big is 26.
No. It's look, man. It's
regular book size.
Yeah, this book right here is 400-ish pages prior to the back matter, right? It's called Flat Earth: The History of an Infamous Idea by Christine Garwood. check this motherfucker out. You ready for this?
Oh, my goodness.
This one is called The Greatest Lie on Earth, Proof That Our World is Not a Moving Globe by Edward Hendry. Look at this.
Well, make sure you put in your documentary what people told me, that I'm not a Christian and I have a fake faith because I don't believe in flat Earth. Because that's what Jesus said to the man hanging on the cross next to him when he said, "Remember me when you go into your kingdom." He said, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." Oh, wait a second. Do you think that the earth is flat or no? Because that matters, right? So yeah, make sure that you put in there that you're 100% not a Christian if you don't believe in the flat earth.
Anyways, so before the back matter on this, 850 pages, right? So,
Right.
And I've read these books already, right? And I walked away from it still a skeptic on the flat earth topic. I've listened to a ton of podcasts. I like hearing people talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been convinced of it. And nor do I ever think I will be. But you're right. It would be the exact same thing if one day it came out like, hey, flat earth is real. Here's all the proof, everybody. And I'd be like, shit. Yeah, you're right. I knew that.
Yeah.
I'm going to write a book on it now.
Yeah.
It's the same shit.
My decades of believing and knowing that the earth is flat. Yes, I'm going to write a book on it now so that I can have credibility in this field that I've been talking massive amounts of crap about for, years and years and years. Yeah. So yeah, I understand. Where you're coming from.
I apologize to anybody who made it to the end of the episode for just listening to rants, but it is what it is. And you chose to listen to this show, and I appreciate you for that, but I do apologize. So, Jake, you ready to lock it up?
Yeah, I suppose.
All right, man. Well, that's it for tonight's episode. In quick hits, SETI formally rewrote its rules for what counts as a valid detection of extraterrestrial intelligence for the first time since 2010, while explicitly drawing a line that those rules don't cover UAP. New theoretical physics is asking whether black holes are actually black holes at all. Fresh footage has Lake Champlain's Champ back in the headlines. Operation Spirit Seekers has started a multi-week Dogman investigation near Statesville, North Carolina, and the San Andreas fault system in Southern California is under more stress than it's seen in 1,000 years. In our briefing, the remains of Melissa Casillas were found in New Mexico's Carson National Forest after nearly a year missing, with a handgun beside her that her family says wasn't hers, in an area that had already been searched once. A former FBI agent has floated psychological energy weapons that he called voice-to-skull technology as a possible explanation for the broader pattern of missing scientists, drawing a direct comparison to the government-acknowledged Havana syndrome. And in the deep dive, we walk through the week disclosure became institutional. Spielberg's Disclosure Day opened to the biggest original weekend of his career the same day the Pentagon released its largest UAP file drop yet, including an admission that the government lied about UFO sightings for over a decade to protect classified spy plane programs. And 3 days later, the White House quietly assembled its first dedicated UAP Science Council, led by Avi Loeb, with skeptic Michael Shermer, built in specifically to keep the process honest. I love Avi Loeb, by the way. Great scientist. On July 18th, I'll be at MUFON, Wisconsin at the Waukesha Airport. And on July 25th, I'll be at Elmwood UFO Days presenting and leading bus tours. So come find us. That's right, Jake will be there too. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and review, and find us on InfiniteRabbitHole.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. We're back next week. The next Pursue release is about a month out, and the new Science Council is just getting started, so we'll be here for whatever comes out next. Until then, keep your eyes open, keep asking questions, and remember, the truth is out there. You just have to know where to look. I'm Jeremy Sosha, and we'll see you in the next fork of the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. If you're looking for more of our stuff, head on over to InfiniteRabbitHole.com, where you can find links to all the podcast players that we are available on, and even our video platforms such as TikTok and YouTube. While you're there, make sure to check out all the links for our socials and hit that follow so you know when all the new stuff from our podcast comes out. And until next time, travelers, we'll see you right here in the next fork in the path of the infinite rabbit hole. Bye.